Donald Trump has recently issued a stern warning to BRICS nations. He has stated that if they decide to abandon the US dollar in global trade, America will respond by imposing a 100% tariff on their goods. However, the deeper implications of this threat go beyond just tariffs. At the core of this issue lies China's aggressive financial strategy. China has been steadily reducing its holdings of US Treasury bonds while significantly increasing its gold reserves. The question arises, could these moves lead to a major transformation in the global financial order? Trump's warning underscores the risks of shifting away from the dollar. In early 2025, he made it clear that if BRICS nations continue to bypass the US dollar in their international transactions, they will face severe trade penalties. This is particularly directed at China, which is actively working to minimize its reliance on the US currency. The US dollar has long been the dominant global reserve currency, granting America the ability to borrow at favorable rates and maintain a powerful position in global trade. Nonetheless, BRICS nations, led primarily by China, are determined to change this status quo. This raises the question, can the United States sustain its financial supremacy as other nations shift away from the dollar? Trump argues that the economic consequences of such a move would be severe. If BRICS countries cease using the dollar, it would not only be a financial blow to the US, but could also erode the dollar's global influence, destabilizing the entire international financial system and challenging America's economic leadership. China is executing a calculated financial maneuver to counterbalance US influence. By drastically reducing its holdings of US Treasury bonds, securities that help finance America's national debt, China is taking a clear stance. Once one of the largest foreign holders of US debt, China is now prioritizing an increase in its gold reserves. In 2024 alone, China added 250 tons of gold to its reserves. This strategic move not only reduces China's dependency on the US dollar, but also acts as a safeguard against financial instability on a global scale. If gold were to replace the dollar in international transactions, it could signal a seismic shift in global economic structures. China's decision to accumulate gold is not just a reactive measure against US policies, but a long-term strategy designed to ensure financial resilience in the face of geopolitical tensions. By diminishing its reliance on US Treasury bonds, China is building a protective barrier against economic volatility and potential sanctions imposed through the dollar-based financial system. This strategy raises a fundamental question. What impact will this have on the US economy and the broader global financial landscape? If major economies like China and other BRICS members persist in decreasing their dependence on the US dollar while fortifying their gold reserves, we could witness an unprecedented transformation in the financial order. The dollar, once the undisputed global reserve currency, may see a decline in its dominant role. This shift could have profound ramifications for the US economy. If the dollar loses its central status in global trade, the US will face steeper borrowing costs, reduced economic leverage, and a diminished ability to shape international financial policies. In such a scenario, the global financial system will have to adapt, potentially returning to gold as a key medium for international transactions. China is not alone in this effort. Other BRICS nations, including Russia, India, and Brazil, are also boosting their gold reserves and exploring alternative payment mechanisms to bypass the US dollar. Furthermore, Japan and China, the two largest foreign creditors of the US, are both actively reducing their holdings of US Treasury bonds. The motivations behind this trend are multifaceted. Japan, once a key buyer of US government bonds, has recently offloaded significant portions of its holdings. In October 2024 alone, Japan sold over $20 billion in US Treasuries. A major factor behind this decision was the rapid depreciation of the Japanese yen against the US dollar. By 2024, the yen had reached its lowest value in decades, compelling the Japanese government to take action. In an effort to stabilize its economy, Japan liquidated U.S. Treasuries and used the proceeds to support its currency. Additionally, Japan has been prioritizing domestic investments in infrastructure, technology, and other key industries, reducing its exposure to American debt in the process. This is not merely a short-term financial adjustment. Rather, it represents a long-term strategy aimed at bolstering Japan's economic independence. China is following a similar path. Since reaching a peak of $1.27 trillion in U.S. Treasury holdings in 2014, China has systematically reduced its exposure, bringing its holdings below $800 billion by the end of 2024, its lowest level in over a decade. The backdrop of escalating trade tensions between China and the U.S. has motivated Beijing to diversify its financial reserves. By shifting toward gold and investing in alternative markets, China is signaling that it no longer wishes to be excessively reliant on the U.S. dollar. This shift could trigger a fundamental restructuring of the global financial system. The sell-off of U.S. Treasury bonds by major economies like Japan and China could have ripple effects across the American economy. If these significant players reduce their purchasing of U.S. bonds, the U.S. government may be forced to hike interest rates to attract alternative investors. Higher interest rates, in turn, would raise borrowing costs for the government, businesses, and individual consumers alike. With U.S. national debt surpassing $34 trillion, rising interest rates could further strain the government's budget, leaving fewer resources for essential services such as healthcare, education, and infrastructure development. If this pattern continues, maintaining financial stability will become an increasingly daunting challenge for the U.S. If Donald Trump returns to the presidency, how will this financial landscape evolve? During his previous term, Trump was vocal in criticizing countries like Japan and China for their trade practices. He also implemented policies aimed at protecting American industries from foreign competition. Should he return to office, Trump might exert pressure on Japan to continue purchasing U.S. Treasuries. However, whether Japan would comply is uncertain. If the U.S. pursues an increasingly protectionist agenda, Japan might accelerate its economic pivot toward alternative trading partners such as China, the European Union, and other Asian economies to reduce its dependence on the American financial system. As nations reconsider their exposure to U.S. debt, a larger question emerges: will other countries follow suit? The decisions of Japan and China could set a precedent, prompting other economies to reassess their reliance on U.S. bonds. Such shifts could drive a major realignment in global financial structures. If the U.S. does not respond strategically, it may encounter even greater economic challenges in the near future. What measures will Washington take to maintain its financial supremacy? The coming months will provide clearer insights. As Japan and China recalibrate their financial strategies, the global economic power structure may be undergoing a fundamental transformation. The key question remains: how will the United States respond? Tariffs were intended to serve as a protective measure for the U.S. economy, but instead of strengthening American financial standing, they have triggered significant market disruptions. In a single day, $4 trillion vanished from the U.S. stock market. Businesses are struggling, and investors are in a state of panic. The trade war has not merely impacted production, it has caused upheaval in financial markets. Major technology companies such as Apple, Nvidia, and Tesla have been among the hardest hit. Apple, a tech giant with a market capitalization exceeding $2.7 trillion, saw its stock plunge by 6.3%, erasing over $160 billion in value within a single trading session. Nvidia, a leader in AI chip production, faced an even steeper decline of 7.8%, amounting to a loss of nearly $180 billion in market capitalization. Tesla suffered the most, with its stock dropping 9.2%, wiping out $125 billion from its valuation in a single day. The broader market suffered as well. Microsoft, Meta, and Google experienced losses between 5% and 7%, collectively erasing $350 billion in market value. If the trend continues, analysts warn of a prolonged downturn in the tech sector. As America faces mounting economic uncertainty, the challenge remains. Will the U.S. adapt to these shifting dynamics, or will it continue down a path of financial turbulence? The coming months will determine the trajectory of global economic power. I have shared my opinion, but what do you think? Leave your comment, give it a like, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching. See you soon.